Okay, recording started then. Ryan, go ahead.
Sorry, just closing a couple tabs real quick because the zooming wasn't really responding there. And I have a few hundred tabs open. Okay. See if that's any better. Okay, so let's see. July 12th. Yeah. Testing should be done now. I think that was done last week, right, Shweta?
Yeah, it was done, and thanks to John, the last 4 manual testing he completed when we discussed. So all the P0s have been tested at this point, and the ones require automation, other than few, I think 5 or 6, most of them have been automated in P0 category. The next milestone is code freeze, which is expected tomorrow.
Yep. Okay. Release updates. Do we have anyone from the 111 release managers here?
That's what I'm thinking. I don't see anyone. Normally, John, he joins and he's not here. So I can work with them over the channel. We have reduced a lot from last 16 to 2 P0s, which is a great news. But that one release broker on webhook still ongoing. So I have to check if it is going to be a problem because we have a code freeze tomorrow.
Okay.
Is Sam here? Because I think Sam is the one who is working on that release brokers. Maybe Sam can update us on it.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so for some context, the issue is we moved the validating webhook from base to be a per revision resource. And to keep it from purging on Helm installs, we had to keep like a lame duck validating webhook in base. So it turns out that that's actually an issue because it creates a lot of error logs whenever you apply resources because the CA bundle never gets patched in. So I think the fix is just to remove it from base and add a caveat to the Helm install and upgrade documentation about well, it's described more in the issue, but yeah, I think there's a fix for it.
Okay, and Sam, we were also missing the mechanism to install the per revision one via Helm. So I'm guessing you're going to fix that too, right?
Yeah, there's a PR link.
Okay, thanks. So the next one on here is release 1.12 recruiting. Do we have any updates on that?
So Friday, actually, Louis mentioned that there is some discussion in the steering committee. Swain is here, probably have more context. And there is a sheet where we are updating the release manager. So what Louis mentioned is that it will come up in the TOC. I do have the link to the release, but Swain, can you provide more context on this one, how we are proceeding and who is the responsible folks to add the information in this sheet?
On which sheet? The
Istio release. So I just pinged Istio release manager schedule. What he mentioned was there was some discussion in the steering committee that rather than looking every quarter to have it like built for complete 1 year, and each company should volunteer the release managers. So Ryan, if you can click on the sheet. But Louis mentioned that this will come up in the TOC.
I can give more context while Sven is trying to refresh his weekend memory. So basically, the context is we were discussing in steering how we can better staff the release managing process if we agree to extending support for Istio. Last week, Mitch brought up, can we extend the support for Istio releases for 3 months or every alternate release for 3 months? Whatever it is, one of the ideas to better staff it was if we can have a better rotation policy in the release managers group that automatically shares the burden among vendors and whoever else is heavily involved in the community. So as part of that exercise, Louis started writing down who have been release managers, people and their affiliations. And this is what we have so far. So going forward, again, we can try to manage this load better. And if we want, we can create a schedule looking ahead with 2 or 3 releases in advance so that we are not always scouting for people and searching desperately in the last minute. Did I miss anything, Sven?
No, I think that's right. Yeah, this was part of the discussion of how to better resource if we're going to extend support.
Now, would that be saying this individual would be a release manager 6 or 9 months from that date?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
If we decide to extend it, then the responsibility is also extended.
Okay.
So how are we going to add the names here, right? Otherwise, this sheet will remain empty. I just want to make sure we have the responsibility of or the responsible owners, or is it volunteer? How are we trying to add this?
I don't think we had agreed that we were going to do that, right? Like this was just, we had started the process of looking backwards. We hadn't started the process of looking forwards yet. So I don't want to rush ahead being like, oh, we're now doing this and we're now going to fill everyone out, right? Like I mean, Neeraj, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we had quite
agreed. And I was going to say the same thing. I don't want to rush here. First, we need to have some basic agreement among companies that are sitting in the steering, and then folks who attend TOC. Let's collect those names and understand how vested they are in being release managers. And then we will see whether we can actually fill this out.
I have a similar doc that I'm keeping track of for other reasons in the Istio community drive, by the way. Going all the way back to 1.1.
Oh, great. Then if you can share that also and add it in the TOC document, probably Louis can just stop his work and take it from there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this would be very helpful, Brian. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I wanted to remove them from the groups and I wanted to remove them from the groups without actually removing the contributions. Okay, so
I think that it does leave us at still needing 1 to 2 more for 112. Right?
It does. Okay. So looking at this, we have today securities roadmap presentations.
It should be down in the notes.
Down on the agenda for today?
Yeah, it should be. I don't know. I can't guarantee that.
Okay. Do we want to go top to bottom or start with that and go on?
Maybe we should probably start with that one.
Okay.
Is that actually on here, Shweta?
The last one?
No, the whoever was doing a roadmap review today.
So the security was supposed to present and they messaged that they are not ready.
Okay.
So we have to skip for this one.
Reschedule.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I think if Mitch is not here and Louis is not here, I don't know if we want to. So if we're going back to the top, I don't know if we want to talk about skip the extended support discussion. I can just mention that we did discuss it in steering, and one of the things, there was some desire to actually support extending it for every release, not just alternating. But obviously we need to know exactly how much that's going to cost. to do.
Yeah,
So,
we discussed the alternating last week, and then we asked, or the ever release last week, and then we asked for alternating.
Yeah.
So now we have both. Yeah, that's.
I think we can wait till next week, but hopefully we can have the sort of.
So from what I understand, Mitch has, I guess between Mitch and Brian, all the data should already be here, right? So in fact, yeah, Mitch is on vacation, but he specifically mentioned that he doesn't need to be here to discuss it because all the information is there, and TOC can actually decide. So if that's not the case, then of course we should wait. But
so
what is missing?
That's a good question. Mitch did send out an email with the update Friday, and we're still kind of discussing that in TOC. Like Friday or today. Either way, that conversation really kicked off this morning. So I think it's probably better to wait until next week. But
yeah, he
Okay.
did send an email. He looked forward to discuss on August 9th, which is next Monday's TOC meeting, because he's also looking forward for Brian Avery to collect feedback from the product security work group tomorrow, right?
yeah, that's right. It's Thursday we're discussing that. But yeah.
So to take this forward, I think the ask here is all TOC members, make sure you respond to Mitch's email, say, what concerns you have or what methodology you prefer so that we can close on this by end of this week and then have a good discussion next week, TOC.
Okay. So next here we have the external control plane beta promotion.
Yeah, so Frank was on the call last week and this got, and I was out and this got postponed to this week. And of course, Frank is out this week. So he asked if I could cover this one. And so basically there were a couple of things left for promotion to beta. If you actually look at the files changed, we did already, it's actually interesting. If you look at the files change, it already says TOC approves this. So at the bottom, but the key things there were we did add Istio.io tests. So it is being tested as part of the Istio.io tests. I believe Lynn did have the supportability review in December or January. So that one was checked off. And sort of the key thing that was left was the integration tests. And there was one, it was being skipped because it was flaky. And in reality, it really didn't test that things worked. So we did update that. So at least now it's being tested. We are verifying indeed that the gateway is created and running. There is one PR that Frank worked on last week, adding the reachability test. And my plan is now that I'm back this week to review that and hopefully get that pushed in. I guess it'd be good to be pushed in today with code freeze. And so that test is now done. So sort of the big thing was to make sure we got the testing done, and we think that's complete. We do still need to get the reachability test merged and then add that into test infra so that is being run on every build.
So you think that'll be completed today, you said?
Frank told me the PR was ready to go. Part of the problem, I was going to go and look at his new test to make sure that worked okay. Part of the problem is it's a TNR thing and I can't approve it because I have some commits in there. So I will need to get somebody from TNR to approve that once I verified that all looks good. And then I'll have to tweak I have a PR out in test infra to add that test. Was actually my old test. So I'm gonna have to tweak that PR a little bit and then we get that in. And then that should add the test into the pipeline.
So Eric, all the changes and the enhancements made to ensure this is beta quality look really good to me. My main concern here is we are relying on mesh config for this feature, which I think we brought up last week. And we have been holding back promotion of quite a few features because it relies on mesh config. So I would like to get consistency.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
What about this relies on mesh config?
When I look at the docs, it has a lot of things from mesh config. Take a look. I don't know specifically.
That's install time options, no?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand what the issue is with that. Of course, mesh config is how you control the discovery address. So, like, but I just don't know what else we could possibly do, and why we would hold this back based on that.
And to be clear, this is not a user. I mean, end user doesn't actually deal with that. That's practically something that the operator is doing. So
Well,
users are not actually using mesh config.
We do
If you're
have a
managing-
user using this, by the way, just quickly chime in. I mean, Airbnb said they are using this
Yeah.
Istio account. But I do agree with you, Carsten and John's comment about using mesh config, though, because the external Istio doesn't use more mesh config than multi-cluster support. It will be very minimum just to like indicate discovery service, which we do it in multi-cluster also, and multi-cluster is already beta.
I mean, sorry, what I meant is users are not actually interacting with mesh config. We are not asking users to change mesh config as an API. It's just part of the install options, and usually for external, it's managed by some operator or some other entity.
Right, exactly. I agree with your point. Yeah, and this is no more than multi-cluster installation of Istio, right? So
it's less, yes.
based only at the installation time, the interaction with mesh config.
So, okay, that's fair, I think. And there are a bunch of, it relies also on a lot of the values, like the Istio D remote and stuff like that. Is that supposed to be the stable API for this feature?
It's not an API, Niraj. I mean, that's an installed experience, but I don't think we consider the stuff that is done when you install Istio to be on the same level with routes and destination rules. I mean, the problem is at runtime after you install Istio, and as a normal user that is interacting with Istio, if you are required to use those APIs and we are required to support them or not.
What do others think? I don't know. It really feels arbitrary and defining the support policies and our graduation policies on the fly to me. And we try to rationalize this on per case by case basis, which is very difficult.
But install versus runtime is not very difficult. I mean, it's pretty clear cut.
Okay, so going forward, whatever install time, irrespective of where that state is, that is supposed to be stable. As in that whatever the feature, whichever feature consumes it, it doesn't matter. We can promote it. Anything runtime which comes from mesh config cannot move past alpha.
So I guess my thoughts there are, I mean, mesh config is integrated into all sorts of stuff. We can't just block everything because our installation changes. The other thing there is, presumably most people have like staging environments and everything that they're running their installation through before they actually deploy. So they've done some testing to make sure everything came up and everything before they go into production. And when they do go into production, they're much more concerned about the runtime and things being stable over time than they are that initial installation that they've tested.
Yeah, I'm pretty concerned about this, thinking that if something uses mesh config, it suddenly is stuck at alpha. I mean,
I
First,
agree.
we need to have a way to configure mesh settings, and mesh config is the only way to do that now. And there's been no proposals on any alternative. So without that, we either have to allow mesh config features to be promoted or just stop promoting anything. And it seems like the first option is a much better one. In fact, perhaps we should promote mesh config itself to beta officially. Now, certainly not all fields of it. But like, for example, auto MTLS, that's in mesh config. I think it's stable now. Like, we're not going to introduce like a new CRD just to enable or disable, auto MTLS. Like,
I don't know, John. I mean, if we believe that users, I mean, is auto MTLS something that should be global for the entire mesh and be set at install time and only by the administrator, or is it something that should be set at namespace level and have a proper API, meaning in networking? I mean, why the telemetry is 90% of mesh config. We agreed already that users may want to have individual namespaces with their own options, not to go reinstall Istio every time they want to change something. So
yeah, I mean, I totally agree. There's things in mesh config that should not be in mesh config, but there's also things that are in mesh config that should continue to be in mesh config.
For example,
settings on how to connect to Kubernetes, that has to be in mesh config more or less, right? Like,
and
it's kind of the
discovery
bootstrap.
address. Yeah,
Well,
and
discovery
discovery
address is proxy config, but
yeah.
I mean,
So I think-
everything has config maps to like every Linkerd, Kubernetes, Prometheus. Yeah, they all use config maps to configure these type of settings. That seems like a perfectly fine way to go. I'm not saying every field should be in there. Just the concept of having this mesh config that's this config map Istio that configures Istio.
So nobody agrees with having mesh config and couple of fields, but discovery address is in proxy config, by the way, which is already scheduled. But I was asking if you find any field in mesh config that you think should be reserved, because I didn't. But the question is, we need proper review and to select the fields that remain. That was the plan. Are we changing the plan?
I think we should go through all the fields, but we shouldn't hold up all these features that happen to depend on existing fields just because they happen to depend on these fields, right? It's not like this is adding new fields to mesh config, or like this is using fields that are already used by other features as well. It doesn't make sense to me to hold them back while the other features that use the same exact fields are beta already.
Yeah, generally, I kind of agree. I don't think we should be holding back features because we can't get our API Act in order, right?
So how
we need to not stuff. So anyone who is saying we should block things needs to propose fixing things and actually get them fixed and not just block, right? We can't block promotion of features.
But then I thought that the consensus was that we promote things to a proper API, we review it as an API, we define the API, and that we can support telemetry, for example. I thought that was the conclusion, that or security, that there will be security APIs, telemetry APIs that include the features that we want, and users can interact with them with proper RBAC and normal behavior, and not requiring installation. That's a fundamental problem. We are saying that to operate this feature, you need to be mesh admin and to reinstall Istio, because that's how, or to control Istio system.
I'm saying to promote things, we don't need to block on getting that solved. I agree that that's where we want to go, but we can't block all progress in the project.
No, but we're not blocking. We're not saying that we cannot promote features that at the install time use some mesh config. I mean, that's okay. But if they require users to modify mesh config to properly work with that feature, that's a different story.
I'm sorry. I mean, these agreements, I've never heard of an agreement like this before, whether that first, I mean, I heard about if you're a feature relies on mesh config, it cannot be promoted. Few weeks ago, when Jacob told me that we were trying to promote topology configuration for, and it was never promoted, even though all the work was done. And that's why I'm bringing it up, because the reason was it relies on mesh config. Now,
so I'm saying we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't block. If anything
So-
is blocked on, like, let's not. Let's.
No, that's a perfect example, Niraj. The network topology is a perfect example. I mean, the problem is not that it relies on mesh config. The problem is that it relies in modifying the Istio system for something that normally should be, per namespace and control.
I understand the end state. We have users who are using an alpha state feature for long and they don't want to use it in production. They have done their testing. That's the problem I'm trying to solve right now. The magical API that we are proposing, if it comes today, I will take it, but it hasn't come in 6 to 9 months.
So if someone wants this feature to be promoted, they will define the CRD or extend the networking API with whatever is necessary, and it can be promoted.
No,
I mean, that's
it's arbitrary blocking of things. That's not allowed. It was agreed to put in there and then follow the process of promotion. I'm sorry.
So I think, going to the external control plane doc, I'm pretty sure the only field that's used in mesh config, if I'm reading the doc right, is root namespace. So there's one single field, and that's clearly not a user config, right? That is the owner of the control plane decides. So I feel like the concerns that users shouldn't have to modify mesh config doesn't apply there. The topology thing is actually part of proxy config, so I feel like that's also kind of in a different category. I don't think that should be blocked at all, but it's not even in mesh config either. So I feel like it's, I don't know, a bit orthogonal.
I agree.
So proxy config is going to move to a CRD. That will be better. So at some point, I mean, that I think that at least on that we have consensus. The question is, are we saying that proxy config, which is alpha in the current form, automatically becomes beta and will be supported long term without a CRD, or as it is right now? That's what you are proposing, or what exactly do you want? How are we going to keep the current proxy config in mesh config and how it works and support it long term?
I don't think anyone's saying we'll keep the current proxy config. I think we all are in agreement that we want the proxy config CRD resource.
Yep.
And
that was a consensus. That was a consensus in environments. I mean, I'm not sure what changed here.
No, I don't think anything's changed. We want to promote that to beta. But that doesn't mean that any feature that happens to use proxy config today is now suddenly stuck in alpha. I mean, almost every feature uses mesh config, right? So we can continue to move this forward and proxy config forward, and everyone's happy, I think. Now, I guess we're all saying like we shouldn't block things. Does anyone actually think we should block things? If not, then maybe we're all fighting against a conclusion that no one agrees with.
Yeah, so I think there's maybe some confusing here, right? So if you look at mesh config, there are certain configuration that's more for whoever install Istio, kind of the administrator role of Istio. There are certain roles that's more for a little bit more, a different team who maybe config their Istio for their services, or maybe the platform team, but not necessarily who install and manage Istio. So if you look at this external Istio DDoc in particular, like John, you point out the root namespace, right? So that's whoever install Istio is going to config that, and it's all set. I mean, we don't expect people to really change that. So it's really provided by people who are managing this. And there's no plan, as far as I know, to graduate that into a customer resource, right? But on the other hand, if things are in proxy config, we're already talking about, first of all, it's user-facing configuration. Second of all, we're already in the process of moving them to a customer resource. Now that I recall, a few weeks ago, we may have discussion of when things are in proxy config, we were nervous about them moving to, I think we may discuss moving to stable because of the API is going to be drastic change from mesh config into the proxy config on customer resource. So the user experience will be different. So we were hesitant about the promotion. And if I recall it correctly, the discussion was around promote to stable. So I want to make sure, we separate these two, the configuration just at the install time was the configuration every service owner or maybe namespace admin would deal with it. And it's going to be moved to a different customer resource from mesh config.
Yeah, Lynn, no, I understand it. My point of raising this today was to make sure we are not arbitrarily blocking feature progress. And I think we should have a consistent philosophy. And I agree with Sven, yours, and John's overall statement. Many features rely on this. If the feature has achieved the status of beta, we should just make it beta. And I understand that proxy config someday will be a CRD, but I don't think we can hold things up.
So you want a feature that is beta with alpha APIs that will change.
I know. I'm sorry. That's what the state of the community is right now, Costa.
So why would a user trust the feature that is beta if the API is going to change? I mean,
you can't install Istio if you consider mesh config and proxy config to be alpha right now. Basically, nobody can use Istio.
If our entire concern is around proxy config being alpha, and we know that we plan to promote it to beta next release, then it seems like the only things that matter are this particular feature, because everything else will have proxy config beta by then, right? So to me, I feel like there's kind of two use cases of proxy config. One is I want to configure every proxy in the mesh because it's discovery address and they're all the same. And the other is, actually things that are configured per proxy. And to me, this is just global configs, which it doesn't really matter where it's configured, right? Like we can keep the same API. It's just the admin sticks, hey, here's the CAA, and everything kind of works. If this was something more, I can't think of a good example, but like per proxy, maybe it would be worth waiting. But to me, I don't have an issue with this going to beta. And then next release, proxy config itself becomes beta. And from there on out, we don't really have many issues. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
it makes sense to me. Sven, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I'm mostly just agreeing. I think the concern that many people having, including me, is like, I don't think we want to promote mesh config itself as is to beta and stable, but I think, the point I'm trying to make is like, just because we know we want to get rid of that API, we can't block features that depend on it from getting to beta, right? So yes, we have a case where you have this, not even alpha API that is dependent on by all these features. It's just the state we're in, and I think it means we need to move faster and we need to make more progress on getting things out of there. Right? Proxy config is a great step. We need to get the rest of the work done.
But then it's not a binary choice here. I mean, we either promote mesh config to alpha or we don't promote features. I mean, we have also the choice of, if you have a feature, you define the API first in mesh config, and then you define the proper CRD, or you put it in a proper place as a beta API. So like we did with telemetry.
We need to do that too, but I mean, telemetry is a great example, right? It took, I don't know how long Doug had that PR out, right? Like it took like a year for us to agree on an API. And I don't think our users will be happy with us if we take a year to promote anything because we're trying to define APIs. So that's why I'm saying, like, we need to decouple these, right? Like, yes, we need to get the APIs done, but we can't block the features from, like, if the code is stable, we just put the caveat that, sorry, you have to use an unstable API.
But isn't it working as intended? I mean, mesh config was where we can put an API quickly, knowing that it's alpha and it can change, and we don't have to wait a year for it to be, to get, because for API you need, to get a quality API, you need reviews. A year is not, just wasted. It's based, get feedback and make sure it works. That's why you put in the mesh config and alpha first, because you want to get feedback and make changes later. If you are saying that everything in mesh config will automatically become stable magically, how does it work? It's chicken and egg.
So that's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying if you have to configure something in mesh config to use a feature, that feature can still go to beta and stable.
I agree. If the user doesn't have to change it and kind of, you know, every user would have to, like we'd have the policy APIs in security, basically, where you know, everyone had, I mean, had all kind of namespaces and it was almost impossible to move.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'm fine with this promotion. I'm also gonna recommend again Jacob to bring back the promotion of some other features that have been blocked before on the basis of this discussion today.
And maybe start the process to promote to actually define the beta APIs for those features, you know, the right place to have them, and if the API is right, and start up to review, because as Sven said, in mesh config we have a very light review process. It's basically anything goes. While for proper APIs, usually there is a discussion that it's, you know, as typical for an API review like telemetry, and which can take a bit longer because that's how you define a good API, but it's a process. I mean, we cannot have it both ways.
Yeah, so Neeraj, definitely, I think you should ask Jacob to bring it back, so that
Yeah.
you know, we have consistent rules for different scenarios. And then for the purpose of external control plane, I'm not hearing any objections. Should we just record TOC approval for this to beta?
So I have two things to add here. First of all, looking at the actual list, there's a handful of things that aren't addressed yet. And if they're, an explanation in the chat would be useful there. And then the actual promotion of this is TSC approves the promotion. But yeah, we can record it in the agenda. I'm just noticing the 2 performance things and the 3 test things, which I know Eric said there's a test that still needs to be reviewed, but
Right, there's one test, and I mean, the performance stuff, we really don't have anything multi-cluster performance yet, as far as I know. I might be wrong. I'm just sort of going by some stuff that I know Frank and I had discussions on. And like I said, I know we had the reachability test.
So I think the conclusion here is directionally this looks okay to TOC. Ping us back on GitHub whether it's issues or PR saying all the checklists, all the check marks are done, or these things are remaining and why. And then the final stamp can be given.
Yep.
Okay, so just add a comment to why stuff that isn't checked isn't checked, I guess.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
One question.
Thank you.
One question we had in environments when discussing this feature was if this should be a top-level features and treated as such, or is just a sub-case of multi-cluster, because in reality, 99% of the feature is multi-cluster, which we already support. So if we just want to document it as a subset of, or a variant of multi-cluster and not kind of expand even more the documentation area. I think it's okay to have it as a separate feature, but just want to make sure that people are aware of this choice and that we are consciously making it.
I think in general, it would be good to consolidate them. Well, I think there's kind of 2 things. One is how we document it to users, which in general consolidation is good. And 2 is how we treat it here, like in terms of promotion, which I think it's fine to separate because that's more tied to the actual development. I do think in the current state, there may be some concerns about merging them because it's not, like they are still fairly separate. But I think like at a high level, it would be good to consolidate them. I'm just not sure how feasible that is right now. And there may be some more work needed, but I agree. In theory, it should just be, I'm installing multi-cluster. Oh, I happen to want this to just be on its own cluster, and it should be good to go.
Or I'm installing Istio, and just Istio install happens to have multiple cluster. It may be external in terms. Basically, it's
exactly.
more about unified. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I agree.
A quick question here: do we support in-cluster Istio to upgrade to external Istio for the upgrade nodes?
In reality, I don't know if we support it or we don't support it, but it is possible, and you know, it's something you can do with just standard configuration APIs. So you can just get a certificate, apply an API, and it becomes external. So there is nothing special about an external Istio in reality.
Okay.
So shall we move on?
Yeah. So I took some notes for this. Check if you agree, and I think we're ready to move on if everybody agree.
Yeah, good by me. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, so next promotion.
Yeah, hey. So pretty much we added the feature officially to the features repo or the enhancements repo last week. And the only remaining thing for alpha is the API review. So I just kind of wrote up the current state of how you configure revision tags in a doc. And I'm not 100% sure what's looked for alpha API review, but everything's there in the doc. And I guess the main thing I'd like to call attention to is the Helm API. So the way that you configure revision tags for Helm, Jacob wrote a great doc on how to do that right now. And it's like you use Helm template and kube control apply. But that may change in the future into having a separate chart for revision tags. So yeah, that's the main thing I wanted to call attention to for whether this is ready for alpha promotion.
And to clarify, why do we need Helm template and kubectl apply is because of the upgrade experience, because of the resources and for the base chart now. It's only for the base chart that you need Helm template and kubectl apply, and that's because of limitations in Helm.
It's actually not Helm templating the base chart. It's Helm templating the revision tag resource in the Istio discovery chart.
Oh.
Yeah.
Do you recommend Helm template because that's what we like, or because Helm install would not work?
It was because Helm install did not work.
Because of the resource ownership?
Yes. Yeah, you can't swap it around between revisions.
Can you swap it if you use like the special Helm? Well, we can probably discuss offline.
But I mean, I have that separate chart for just revision, and it worked perfectly fine. I mean, it was not a problem. So I wouldn't, you know, for the Istio control plane, we know that we have an option that doesn't require this. We can install Istio with one command and have a separate one for the tag. Let's review it again in environments. I missed this part. I thought that it's resolved and it doesn't require this. But
So this is not to block your promotion to alpha. Just curious on your thoughts on, are we going to have a proper API for the tag commands? Because I remember when you initially proposed this tag commands, there are a lot of comments around this is going to be in a proper customer resource or a proper API for user to set the tag.
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially we tried putting it in the Istio operator. We figured that was a decent place for the declarative API on revision tags, but it turns out that's actually not a great place for it. And you would want kind of a global resource that spans across revisions, and then, you know, like a global resource that applies to all revisions. Like here's the revision, and then a controller that, you know, reconciles the revision tag mapping there into mutating webhooks. I don't think that that's planned right now. So basically, we wouldn't have a CRD for it. We would have a dedicated Helm chart as like the declarative way to do it, and then the just the CLI, just the Istio control tag.
Especially since it's not something that regular users will do. I mean, it's not something the user control which tags are available. That's the cluster admin, the installer.
Yes, it is cluster admin, but it's not like a cloud provider, right? So whoever owns the cluster, they would need to set these to specify which one is the production, which one is their canary.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Lynn, what you're saying is if a platform operator or the mesh or whatever the operator who owns Istio is there, if they're trying to do this through a CI, right? It feels like they will have to do like update their CI workflow, add these istio-ctl tag commands, then delete it again and stuff like that, right? Because it's not declarative.
Yeah, because one of the reason is also I heard some of our user doesn't like to add Istio into their DevOps pipeline. Part of it is because it wasn't approved, so they had to seek special approval. So many of our commands can be controlled by customer resource, right? So they know how to add a customer resource or apply a customer resource using kubectl, which is already approved. And given the Helm option, it's still vague to me on what to do in the scenario for Helm, which is why I was wondering, what are the API we have available for the user without Istio-ctl?
Yeah, Lynn, I think there's two things. Like one, we could in theory introduce like a tag custom resource, but there's substantial implementation complexity with that because you need something to actually reconcile that, which one, we have to figure out which Istio actually does the reconciling, which the way we do that is by the tag resource. So you have a bit of a chicken and egg issue, and it requires extremely high permissions that we don't currently have. But if they don't want Istio-ctl, that's fine. They can, like the tag generates the plain Kubernetes configs, and they can just stick those into their pipeline. So they may need to run Istio-ctl once on their laptop and then check it into Git or whatever. But I think that's perfectly fine.
Okay, that's good to know. I was not able to.
Yeah, tag set is like
okay.
Applies it for you, and tag generate just outputs the YAML, and then you could kubectl apply it if you wanted.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
and basically the Helm template command is mimicking tag generate.
And there is an API that exists to do this, which is the mutating webhook API. So users can create a mutating webhook. The format is nothing special. That's what really this time does.
Okay, that's great. I don't have any concerns, Sam.
So did you say you're going to take this back through environments costing? Or are you asking for approval?
No, the details about Helm, how to do Helm install, because it is possible. I mean, even with Helm template, it's okay, but I was not aware that we reverted back to kubectl apply.
Okay.
Everything else is fine.
Yeah,
Okay.
Costin, that will be great if you can come up with a workflow without relying on kubectl. So yeah, we can revisit this discussion next week if it's not too late for you, Sam.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Okay, thanks. So next on the list is Kubernetes 1.22 is out August 4th. And whether we want to do a banner on Istio.io warning users that 1.9 and below won't work.
Yes.
Yeah.
We should do a banner.
What's the minimum we support right now? Is that 1.14? Or
Kubernetes?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's past 1.14. Yeah, what version of Kubernetes?
Our official support for 1.10 is 1.18 through 1.21. Our unofficial is 16 and 17 also happen to work.
Okay.
So the problem is that historically we have newer versions have just happened to work, and so people have upgraded Kubernetes beyond that window. This is the first time, I think maybe even ever, that a new Kubernetes version actually breaks Istio. And so the banner is basically just saying, hey, what we've been telling you all along is actually true this time, and it will legitimately break. So make sure you understand that. So we're inside of our policy. It's just we've always been more lenient before.
Okay. 1.16 had something that broke something too, right?
Yes, but that was kind of the opposite. It was you had to be on
Lower.
a newer version. This is the opposite, where if you're on a too new version, then it breaks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
What's the breaking change if it's easy to summarize?
Yeah, they removed the old CRD webhook APIs and Ingress.
Got it.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We also have the Istio support section. I'm wondering if it's worth it to add something there. Meaning, in here.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. There's the supporter release page that has like a table of all of them.
Okay.
We can stick it in there, or maybe on somewhere in here. I feel like just we can stick it wherever anyone's going to look, and it should be fine.
Yeah.
More eyes, the better.
Okay. So the next one here is Shweta, 1.11 Kubernetes support.
Yeah, because we discussed that also in the working group leads that we are planning to have a banner up for any versions which will not work with K8s 1.22. So just a FYI for everyone that we are planning to do so. And this is going to be the ownership of the docs team to help us do the banner update on Istio.io.
Yep. So for the next one, 1.11 support, seems like if we just go with bumping one version from the previous one, that would mean 1.19 to 1.22, which sounds reasonable to me. I don't know if anyone has opinions on varying from that.
Our policy has been 3 or 4 releases, so that makes sense to me.
Yep, that would continue in line with what we've done. And then the tested but not officially supported would still be 1.16 plus does happen to work.
What were you saying, Niraj?
Now, which version of Kubernetes is the one where they extended their support window?
It's a good question. I don't think they retroactively did it, so I'm guessing it's 1.22 or maybe 1.21.
Okay.
I'll look it
Yeah,
up.
good. As long as it falls within our support window, it looks like it will.
Okay, so the next one here, Istio 1.9 end of life, August 18th. Final security patches, August 20th. Going to patch 1.9, even if it's end of life. Yeah.
Yeah, this is FYI that we are going to do so. If there is a concern, let us know.
When you say patch, you mean you're going to make a new release, right? Or is it just going to be patched and not released?
No, it will be a new release or 1.9.
Okay.
The problem was it was going end of life, but we still wanted to have
Got it.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. The last one is really the reminder for the TOC. A month and a half back, we discussed that we need a one-page strategy for 2022. So the ETA is end of August, so please make sure, because August just started. So I just wanted to make sure there is a reminder.
You said ETA is end of August?
End of the month, yeah, because
Yeah.
August
Okay,
started.
yeah. Yep. I'm just gonna.
So it is for all the TOC members. I don't know if anybody is planning to take a lead, but we need a strategy document for next year so we can drive all the working group leads to start working on their roadmaps. But I need a strategy first.
Okay.
Do you want me to bring it up in the next one, or our TOC is okay to work offline on this one?
I'd say maybe both. Ping us off channel, and
Okay.
then also let's bring it back up again next one, and let's assign people next meeting.
Okay, I will work off the channel. Did we? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Lynn.
I was just going to say, I remember last time we had this topic, and the reason we pushed to end of August was because of the release, and also because collecting feedback from the customers. Are we going to have a user meeting to collect the feedback, or do we want each vendor to do that themselves? What's everybody's input?
I think a follow-up from the Istio community itself would be good, because Istio doesn't necessarily have the same goals as all the vendors.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe we can take offline to figure out how do we schedule these type of meetings to collect the information.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds
go
good.
ahead, Shua. Yeah, go ahead, Shuada.
No worries. So I think that's helpful. So let's work in the channel. Also, do we have consensus on the Istio 1.11 K8S support? Because I heard there was a discussion for supporting 119 to 122, but I did not hear if we have consensus yet. If you go back a little bit up, Brian.
Yeah, I thought we decided 119 or 119 through 122.
Can you confirm?
Yeah, let's record it if you don't mind. I can add a line.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking, Neeraj. And did someone confirm it's in the support window? I know we were looking.
For the support window for Kubernetes?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, maybe we can check offline, Brian, and update this.
Yeah.
We're out of time. Okay.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thanks everyone. Bye.